Okay, so I'm glad to be with you here today. And I have prepared something to discuss with you in terms of what are our learnings from the lockdown in COVID-19 and how we can use these learnings moving on and how we can positively impact our workplace culture. And I thought it would be great for us to have a conversation, so quite interactive conversation. So if you're willing to contribute the next 20 minutes to our conversation about the neuroscience of behavior and its impact on workplace culture, please put yes in the chat box now. That would be great. Let me see how many yeses we get, how many people are willing to join the conversation the next 20 minutes. Yes, thank you so much. That is great. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so let me ask you this question. What do you think in terms of one thing that you personally have learned in the lockdown period that you think can have positive impact moving forward in the new norm? If there's like one word or one phrase, can you put it in the chat box, please? What is one thing which immediately comes to mind? What is one thing that you have learned the last couple of months? Martin is saying making new connections. Thank you, Christina. Empathy. People can adapt. Yes, resilience. I love that. Focus. Linda is saying, Jazz is saying easy to connect without traveling. Acceptance. Listening. The power of demonstrating empathy. Great. Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone. Absolutely. And along these lines, I would like to have this conversation with you, looking at a little bit of neuroscience of behavior and how we can start with like this personal learning and how we can positively project it into impacting the cultures of our teams and of organizations moving forward. So the first thing I would like to discuss with you is how our brains are, what is the principles based on which our brain impacts our behavior. Lots and lots of studies have been done in terms of what are the social drivers of our behavior. And it seems like there are two poles which are quite important in how we behave when we are exposed to a situation. The first thing is that our brain wants to move away from threat, wants to run away from whatever is a threat to the brain. And our brain likes to move towards rewards. So almost we can say that the hormones which are released in the body create behavioral patterns that very quickly want us to react in a certain way in similar situations. And that's what I want to look at with you. So let's remember this. Brain wants to move away from threat, move towards reward. And there are a number of things, number of dimensions which have impact on moving away from threat, moving towards reward, and a set of things that we as leaders could do to help people move in towards the toward mode. And why is that? You might have heard about the SCARF model, which was developed by David Rock at the Neuro Leadership Institute. And the SCARF model stands for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And it seems like along these dimensions, leaders can impact people in moving towards the reward and moving away from threat, or unintentionally do things that put people in the threat mode. Yeah, so as we're hearing fight, flight, freeze, withdrawal, people freeze and can't think clearly, fear, brain freeze, and cortical inhibition. Yeah, that is amazing. So it seems like when we are in the threat mode, our creativity goes down. We cannot see things clearly. We actually focus on primary survival. So, and what we have found out is that a lot of leaders accidentally put people in the threat mode. Therefore, they actually inhibit people's performance. So we're talking about top performing teams, but what are we as leaders doing to encourage and facilitate the top performance? And what are we as leaders doing to bring that performance and to bring that creativity and innovation into the culture? So let me ask you this question now. What happens when we're in toward mode, when we're in reward mode? And we heard beautiful things from Clinton. So these are interconnected. We're just putting the science lens, the behavioral neuroscience lens to it. What happens when we are in toward mode? Yes, creativity flows. Actually, the prefrontal cortex, the most intelligent part of the brain, opens up. So it seems like when we are in toward mode, the primitive part of the brain, the limbic system, the emotional part, rules over the rest and shuts down the prefrontal cortex. And when we're in toward mode, the prefrontal cortex opens up. So of course, what is it that we as leaders want? We want people to be able to utilize their prefrontal cortex as much as possible. Plus, emotionally, we want people to be motivated, to have this intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So now let's look a little bit more closely at the SCARF model and all of these dimensions. And I'm very curious to hear which one of these you identify with most. Status, it's not necessarily only about what is on our business card, but it's about, in a given situation, do I feel that I'm getting recognition? Am I getting acknowledgement? If I'm part of a team, do I feel that there's a reason why I'm there? Or I'm there just because it's scheduled in my calendar? And in a given situation, I want to know, what is my contribution to the performance of the team? Is that clear? Is the why clear enough? And I have noticed in working with teams and leaders, especially in COVID, you know, when we are together at the office, we might have those little chats around work, and we might praise just naturally that we might forget to do when we're working virtually, you know, because we think everything has to go very quickly down to business. So we forget those little, I call them little candies, which have huge impact. And that is praising, that is really, you know, acknowledging people for their contributions to past work, to past projects, and to the current and future projects. So that is what we mean by status. With certainty, and I was really listening with enthusiasm to what Clinton was saying, certainty, indeed, we have also found is quite important for positively impacting the culture of the team and the organization, especially in COVID that we have seen. To start with, people are in the away mode because there's a lot of uncertainty. What's going to happen next? What is going to happen to me, to my job, to my organization? There are health issues as well. Can I cope with this virtual working? So to start with, people are very uncertain. And as leaders, how can we give them this certainty? And one thing, as we heard, was really being very clear with expectations. And another thing that we have seen is that leaders keep saying, well, I don't know where we're going. So how can I give my team certainty? And it's about really framing that certainty. Yes, you might not know where you're going the next 3 months. Nobody does. But you might be able to give your team some anchor, some certainty about the next 2 weeks, about the next 10 days. And that alone helps in anchoring people. Again, if you're uncertain about everything, this puts us in the away mode and hinders our performance. The next dimension is autonomy, is what are the choices that I have? Do I have any choices at all? Can I impact and influence anything at all? And here again, as leaders, framing is quite important to say, this is actually an area that is non-negotiable. This is the non-negotiable frame. So for example, we have a deadline for, within this framework, These are the goals. And now I would like to hear from you. What are your ideas on how to reach those goals? So what are the choices that you have? Really giving choices within a framework instead of telling this is what needs to be done and this is how we're going to do it. So it's this fine balance between giving our teams clarity, but not micromanagement. And what we have seen is because a lot of leaders felt unsafe in the situation, in the new situation, they were themselves in the away mode. So they went from actually giving more autonomy to giving less autonomy and micromanaging, which has quite the opposite effect of what the leader wants. So autonomy is our need for wanting to influence things, to have choices. And another quite interesting aspect is relatedness. And relatedness is, am I loved by my team, by my managers? Do I feel included, and do I feel that I belong? So it's really about that oxytocin, that connectedness that we feel. And we have seen two very different reactions to that changed throughout the last weeks. At the very beginning, people were saying, I feel I'm isolated because I'm sitting at home. I don't go to the office. I don't have that personal interaction with others. So I feel that relatedness has gone down. And as they moved on and as people started to cope, with a lot of teams, I saw that they're saying, actually, we feel that we're more connected because we're sitting in each other's living rooms. And actually, we feel that we're asking even more questions about each other's well-beings, which connects us as a team and gives us that shared purpose. So again, relatedness is quite an interesting aspect of focusing on that human core next to the tasks that we have. And finally, it's about fairness. So we all care about fairness. In my own research, my focus was the impact of feedback and formulation on the recipient of the feedback, and which parts of the brain are activated by which type of formulation. And one quite interesting thing is that when we feel that something is unfair, for example, we feel that the leader is not treating all of us fairly, we don't have enough airtime, that we are not given same opportunities or equal opportunities on the team, the part of the brain which is activated is the same part that is activated when we are disgusted by something. So unfairness to our brain is perceived just like disgust. So all of us, if our leaders, if we help ourselves, if our leaders help us in any of these dimensions to go towards, our performance actually goes upwards. And if any of these dimensions are threatened, our performance goes down. So I would like to have a poll here. And as I said, although all these dimensions are important for all of us, we always have certain ones which are most important for us. So which SCARF dimension do you notice is the strongest for you? I would love to see your comments here. Is it status? Is it certainty? What goes first before the others? Okay, great. Okay, fantastic. So we see that relatedness is very strong here within the group. Yes. So do we have the end results now to share? Yes, we see that, 50%, yeah. Relatedness, then followed by fairness, autonomy, and status. And interestingly, nobody voted certainty. In these uncertain times, that is quite interesting. Well, thank you for that. Okay, great. Thank you for that. So, Margaret, can we move on to the next one, please? Okay. So here, as you can see, I have simplified this scientific learning, actually. So as you can see, if we are in threat, this puts us in distress. This narrows down our view and also has negative impact on our performance. Whereas if we look at those SCARF dimensions and as leaders ensure that we are helping our people to move towards rewards, we are working with the monkey brain, which is in charge of reward hormones, and through development, through producing those reward hormones, people's performance can develop and people's performance can go up. So, Margaret, we have 2 more minutes left. Is that right? Sorry, I can't hear you. Okay. So for the last minute, I would like to, can we move on to the next slide, please? Yes, thank you so much. So I have put up some hormones which are connected with the SCARF model here, which are dopamine, endorphin, oxytocin, and serotonin. And some tips for you about things that you can do to help these hormones be produced within the team members' systems to put them in the toward state. So all of these are called happy chemicals or reward hormones. So Margaret, if you just don't mind, if you just click on all of them.
Sorry, what do you mean by all of them?
Just click the rest, please, so we can see all of them.
Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, I get you. Okay, yeah. I wasn't sure. There we go. You have a bit more time though, Maryam, so don't rush. You can, as long as we stop by 12, really. Yep.
Okay, wonderful. That is great to know. So these are the 4 chemicals that I would like to, or neurotransmitters.
I went too fast.
I went too far, yeah. That I wanted to discuss with you. First of all, it's dopamine. You might have heard about dopamine, which is actually the go-getter hormone. So in anticipation of reaching a goal, dopamine is produced in the body, which has a huge impact on our performance. So the question is, what are we as leaders doing to help dopamine rush in the others? Any ideas? Would anyone like to go off mute and share with us if you notice dopamine rush within yourself or within any team members or colleagues in terms of, I made it, we have this vision. Did you get excited about that vision? And that vision could be within the next 2 weeks, as I said. It doesn't have to be like a global vision. Anyone would like to share anything? Any dopamine rushes that you have experienced recently?
I was pondering, obviously small achievable goals, but just slightly at a stretch, so they're not obvious, would cause that kind of reaction, I believe.
Absolutely, Jazz. Thank you so much for sharing that. Sometimes we forget how important it is to celebrate small achievements and miniature goals. And that has a huge impact on the performance of the team. So what is it that we achieved last week? What is our learning from that achievement? And how can we do more of that? That alone, you're pressing other people's dopamine button. And isn't that great? I mean, it is amazing to have that feeling of celebration about little steps. Thank you for that. So anyone else who would like to share anything about dopamine rush? We made it, we did it, and this
I think getting feedback.
Sure.
Getting feedback, if you've delivered a course or something like that, and you need that. You need to know how it landed and it was successful.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes we forget to give that feedback to people, right? And how, a set of things that others did, how that landed with the customer, with the client, or with the target group. Thank you for that. The next thing is, and dopamine. If you look at the SCARF model, how do you link dopamine with which dimension of SCARF would you say? Any ideas? You can put it in the chat box if you like. So the vision, yes, I made it. Which dimension of SCARF model would you relate to that? Any ideas? Yes, Linda, thank you so much. Yeah. So praising people, celebrating success directly has impact on status and puts people into toward mode. Well done. Okay, let's look at the next one, which is endorphin. Endorphin is also one of the happy chemicals. And it is a natural painkiller and is normally produced when you want safety and security. Again, for some people, endorphins are more important than for others. And in some situations where everything is ambiguous, uncertain, endorphins become even more important. Endorphins are especially produced when we find out about things, when we say, oh yes, now I know it. Now I know our steps for the next 2 weeks. Now I know where we're going with this. These are the areas that the leader can give me some direction. And these are the areas that the leader cannot give me directions yet, but I trust they will as soon as they find out. So anyone would like to share any endorphin stories, anything that you found within yourself or the observations that you've had that endorphin was released in the team, more higher level of certainty was experienced in the team? May I ask for any volunteers? Thank you for Linda's comment. Yeah, I'm glad I pressed your dopamine button. Jazz is saying clear vision. Martin is saying when there's a clear strategy for going forward. Exactly. Yes. So it's again about clarity and, of course, which one of the SCARF model dimensions can you recognize in endorphins? Earl is saying we want a big job but had to work really hard and long hours to win. Great, thank you, Earl, for sharing. So endorphins are produced, which SCARF? Yes, absolutely, certainty. So that is where we can have positive impact on the performance of the team and on the culture. Absolutely. Next one is oxytocin, is one of my favorites. A lot of studies have been done in oxytocin that people saw actually when the team bonds better, when there's a stronger relatedness, and as we noticed with your group, relatedness was also one of the first dimensions, performance goes up. So if I feel I can trust my teammates, I can trust my coworkers, I can trust my manager, I can trust my organization, if I have that feeling of belonging and trust and being included, like an inclusive culture, performance goes up. Oxytocin is produced when we actually have fun with each other and we are looking forward to spending time with our colleagues. And that is something that I have noticed, and we have seen that at the very beginning when people went into virtual work, their levels of oxytocin went down. Not that we went and measured everyone's level of oxytocin, although it's doable, but through what people were saying that I don't feel that relatedness is as strong as before. I feel isolated. I miss the coffee chit-chats that we have had. And then we started working with the leaders and with the teams to somehow intentionally bring those coffee chats into their meetings. For example, things that automatically happen when you go to the office do not necessarily happen when you're having a virtual meeting. So it was about how can we have those after-hour sessions, that everyone brings a drink and we have a small talk around how we're doing, how we're best coping, what has been successful, what are our learnings from some setbacks, and so on, which we saw has a huge impact on bonding teams together. Any oxytocin stories that anyone wants to share at here?
Maryam, just to let you know, we got 3 minutes to go before the next session.
Any oxytocin stories, anyone? Please feel free to share in the chat or go off mute and share with us here. Any time that anything anyone did that you felt more bonded towards a team or towards a person? The sense of being valued, Martin is saying, yes. Anything else? We heard a lot that people said, I really appreciate that my leader cares about my well-being. They care how well I'm coping. And also that they're giving me the freedom to pick and choose what is the best time for me. Some people said, due to family obligations, best for me to work in the mornings, work in the evenings, work at noon, and so on. And showing that care has apparently been quite important for people. And finally, it's the serotonin. The serotonin is the action hormone. On the one hand, it's pride, status, and self-esteem. On the other hand is the feeling of winning, respect, and attention. It is the action hormone of steps which are being taken. So people don't feel they're in a rut, but they feel that things are happening and moving. And as a team, we have managed to make these are the steps that we have managed to make. And also, these are the things that we can learn from. And that is what we refer to as growth mindset. What are we learning from those setbacks? What are we learning from each other? Not necessarily only success stories, but also learning from setbacks, which increases serotonin. So we have tons of different hormones, but these four relate directly with the SCARF model, which is a well-researched model. And interesting would be, how can we take the learnings that we've had in the very unusual circumstances that we have been in, how can we carry that on to the new normal and have positive impact one by one at a time, one team at a time within the organization. So we've been working with many leaders in the same organization, see what steps they can take in the teams to bring that inclusive culture more, to positively impact, and what are the learnings they have had that they can actually carry over and transition to the new normal. So I would like to stop here and see if you have any questions, any comments, or any insights that you would like to share.